see how they...
And the ceiling and this was leaking. They finally fixed it.
Yeah. It's so, yeah, it's hard.
Okay, let's get started. The Planning and Zoning meeting for August 22nd, 2018 will now come to order. Please stand with us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we have roll call, please?
Chairman Williams.
Here.
Vice Chairman Shavir.
Here.
Secretary Chambers. Member Faison. Member Baker.
Here.
Member Taylor.
Here.
Member Noel Copeland.
Here.
School Board Member Hare.
Here.
Okay, and then we have a quorum. Next is approval of minutes for July 18th, 2018.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes for July 18, 2018.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All persons who anticipate speaking on any public hearing item must first fill out the oath card to be heard on that agenda item and sign the oath card contained thereon. These cards are located on the table near the entrance to the council chamber or may be obtained from the recording secretary. This meeting will be conducted in accordance to procedures adopted in Resolution 24-1997. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first. Those opposed will be heard second, and those who wish to make a public comment on an item will speak third. The applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. A representative from either side, for or against, may cross-examine a witness. Anyone who speaks is considered a witness. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents you desire the commission to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and will be retained by the city. Please submit such exhibits to the recording secretary. Staff, has all items been properly advertised?
Yes.
And has anybody on the board had the opportunity to speak to anybody in the public or visit the site coming before us? And so I'll make a note here. I've already discussed with the city that I did speak to somebody in the public actually coming before us about one of the items coming before us. It doesn't influence my decision in any way, but I needed to disclose that. And if there's paperwork that you'd like me to sign, I'd be willing to sign it. So, all right, with that, let's go to the first item.
Okay, item 9A begins on page 9 of your packet. Based upon a citizen request, council has directed staff to develop an ordinance establishing a one-year pilot program to allow plant nurseries as a limited use in the community commercial zoning district. And so what I'm going to do, actually, Lori, will you pass out those sheets? The council has already conducted a first hearing on this item, and based on the discussion that was had during that meeting, staff went ahead and made some changes so that basically you all would have the most up-to-date version. But that was done after your agenda had been published, and I'm going to get one too, actually. So the changes actually in the ordinance itself start on page 18 of your packet. And the changes that you have there in front of you are under subsections J, K, L, I think just J, K, and L is what it is. And so basically what this is would be a pilot program that would be effective for 1 year from the date of adoption. And the conditions of that pilot program are listed there starting on page 18 in your packet and then continuing on page 19 as well. And so I will go through some of the highlights, and then I'll explain the changes that occurred since the city council meeting. So some of the highlights in this, so of course a notarized owner authorization form is required, so anyone that's conducting a business, the pilot program has to have permission to be using the property that they're using. A permanent building is not required as part of this pilot program. There could be temporary structures that can be used, but they will have to meet the requirements of the Florida Building Code. Outdoor storage of bulk materials is not permitted, and that includes things such as mulch, dirt, rock, and other materials such as that. Although it does allow for the storage of prepackaged materials that aren't plants, but they are limited to being covered, and a limitation on the square feet of the amount that can be stored on site. Going along with the theme of not requiring a permanent building, stabilized parking is not required so long as there is a written parking use agreement with an adjacent landowner that is in place. And if improved parking is provided, then all applicable regulations in terms of stormwater and that will be enforced by the city, and that will require a site plan. And then, let's see, a dimensional sketch is required to depict display areas, parking areas. So basically, a generalized site plan is required so that we have a basic understanding of how the site will function under this pilot program. The site's required to meet all ADA requirements, except that the provision of sanitary facilities are not required. And basically, in lieu of that, off-site facilities are required, and there has to be some sort of an agreement with an adjacent property owner to be able to use those facilities. And then J, K, and L, that's where the changes came in based on the city council meeting. And so you'll see there on the sheet that was handed out to you, the text that is bold and highlighted are the changes that, the language that is different and or added that wasn't in the original ordinance that was published in your agenda. And so in that, it talks about violations either found by the health code or the health department or the code board. It basically sets up parameters for how to remedy those situations in subsection J. In K, it allows for a temporary sign to be installed basically during the duration of the pilot program. And then it also specifies that it must be removed if the business ceases to operate. And L is discussed as how it's effective for 12 months, but that it may be extended by council. And the difference between L on the sheet that was handed out and L in the ordinance is that it removed the limitation of just one 12-month extension. And so with that, I'll try to answer any questions that you have, but that's basically what council directed staff to create in order to allow this temporary pilot program.
Okay, Member Ritchie, you had a question? I'm sorry. Taylor. I'll have to get used to that.
Yep. I had one question, because usually a nursery is going to need some bulk supplies like dirt. I mean, mostly the dirt, but I don't know how you're going to accommodate that situation.
So based on the input or the direction that staff was given, that can at times become problematic in terms of allowing bulk storage, especially when there's not a permanent facility on site. That material tends to blow around and things like that during either just regular weather events or during severe weather events. And so if it was a permanent facility, that's part of typically part of the operation of a permanent facility. But since this is a pilot program and they can be operated on a temporary basis, staff didn't think it was necessarily appropriate to allow the stockpiling of those sorts of materials on site without that permanent establishment being there.
I can kind of see mulch or rock or stone, but dirt is almost a necessary thing for a nursery. If you could just require them to possibly have some kind of cover over it, or in some way to contain it so it doesn't blow around. But I would think that nurseries would need some bulk dirt. Okay. That's my opinion.
Okay, is that it?
Yep.
Member Noel Copeland.
Is the owner authorization and the parking agreement, are those in place?
Not that I'm aware of, because these are just the regulations that would develop the pilot program. So we don't have these in place yet because the pilot program hasn't been created. But before the operation of the business begins, we will review to make sure that those documents have been submitted and are acceptable to the city.
And would those, is there a requirement that those be for the 1-year period? Because something in here said that if the owner, on the parking one, if the owner changes their mind, basically it shuts down the pilot.
Okay. I don't recall seeing that in there, but that would be.
It says, should the agreement be terminated, approval of the plant nursery will become null and void.
Okay.
And that's about the parking. So it seems like you just need to require that those two agreements be
The same length of
for
time.
the term of the pilot.
Okay.
Okay, Member Taylor. Did you see?
Just bouncing off of you, that seems a little unfair. Somebody's got a nursery all set up and then the other owner decides not to let them park. You know, they went to the expense of the nursery. That just doesn't seem fair.
Well, I mean, here's a good analogy, or I wouldn't say analogy, but do you remember when we had gaming centers on Hopkins? We'll just say, gaming centers, gambling, whatever you want to call them. All right, part of that was that they had an agreement at Miracle City Mall where they had parking. They did not have the necessary parking there, and so what they had to do was they had to sign an agreement with SIA to allow them to have parking there. Now, had they rescinded that agreement, it would have changed everything. So it's basically, the facilities aren't there. So in lieu of you having this requirement, somebody else is going to allow you to. So it has to be there, because other than that, then they would have to come up and, create a parking lot, create a.
First,
What do you mean?
the parking.
No, they don't. All they have to do is have the agreement. The agreement basically authorizes.
Yeah, I'm just saying that when, in order to qualify for the pilot, they should have the agreement with the landowner and the parking lot person for the period
Yes.
of the pilot.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
prior to.
I
Right, so they
understand.
can't agree and then a month later
Understand.
say, no, I've changed my mind, now your pilot's off the table.
I don't think they should be allowed to.
Right.
No, that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. So, are we good? Oh, hold on. Member Baker.
In addition to the parking and my biggest issue, I guess, is the sanitary issue, because it doesn't say in here that the bathroom facilities have to be any sort of distance away. It never says adjacent property. So you could have an agreement with somebody, that I saw, you could have an agreement with somebody all the way across town, and that's really not, very practical.
No, I see what you're saying, yeah, and that makes sense, yep.
But also, back to this sounds to me like this is not like a real nursery in the way I would just say a real nursery where you're doing things like potting your plants. It sounds to me like these are plants that are already potted and ready, they're just being sold.
That's my understanding based on the conversation that has been had before council, is that it's more of a retail
Right.
portion of it. You're not necessarily growing the plants from seedlings or anything like that. It would be more
Just
of that retail type.
The retail end of the
That's my understanding.
production, okay. And so I am thinking that what you are listing as products are probably the same things in bulk, except these are packaged in small
They could be.
containers for people to take home. Is
They could
that
be.
correct?
And also too, it talks about the outdoor storage of packaged materials. So that could be bags of mulch or bags of soil could be kept on site. This was just the restriction of bulk storage was just the open bins a lot of times that you see that it's just
Right.
loose material. But prepackaged material could be sold on the site, so long as it meets the conditions in
Okay.
here.
And for that reason, if that is the case, if what I'm thinking you're talking about is just the retail end, I would say I don't have a problem then with the bulk for that reason, because they're not really growing anything on site. It's probably grown somewhere else, and it's just the retail.
Should we put retail in there?
Okay, I think that's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Okay. Vice Chairman Shabir.
No, I'm fine, thank you.
You good? All right, so let's do this.
Can I just make a point of clarification that, yes, there is an application for a particular use at a particular site in the city, but this is an ordinance that would affect all community commercial throughout the city of Titusville. And the intent was, yes, Member Noah Copeland indicated that we would want that agreement in place prior to authorizing the pilot program on any site, we would need those land use agreements for the building and the bathroom. And I think that that was a good suggestion for subsection I to and clarify that a written agreement is needed for the use of bathrooms by an adjacent landowner. So thank you for pointing that out. But that is the intent of the city, to get those agreements in place prior to allowing the use. The reason that the pilot program is drafted this way is that after a year, the council will evaluate the situation and decide if they would like to make this a permanent code change, but this would only be for the next 12 months. And then after that time, we'll evaluate the state of the city.
Okay. Member Taylor.
I know many nurseries, except for Rockledge Gardens, do not have sanitary facilities, and there's nothing really close to provide sanitary facilities. So I don't know, you know, if you've just got like an outdoor place with retail plants or something, and they don't have anything close to use the facilities, I've just never seen a lot of restrooms for people to use. Anyway, that's.
Member Baker.
The only other point I'd like to make is, and I don't know if you need to put it in here or not, but to sell plants in the state of Florida, you are required to be registered with the Department of Agriculture.
Good point.
I'm trying to help you real quick, get this thing up. Oh, sure, take your time. I'm writing notes anyway. Okay, let's do this. Let's open this to the public. And do we have cards on this item?
Yes. Patricia Toomey.
Okay.
Hi, folks. I'd like to, I'm Patricia Toomey. I live at 1780 Gulfview Drive, and I'm the one who wants to open the nursery here. So let me address some of the issues. Number one, it's a retail establishment. Number two, the property is adjacent to Keep 'em Running. It is Keep 'em Running. He owns both lots. So those restrooms would be available to both of those properties. It will be in writing. I just want to make sure all of this went through before I signed any agreements and all of those things, and we'll get that going. That's not a problem. So the other issue is bulk items. I really only want what we call amendments. You know, things like worm castings and, you know, some aged manure, things of that nature that we need to have so that people are successful with gardening. And that's my whole deal. I do not want truckloads of soil. I don't want to deal with it. With that, I'm only taking up 1/3 of the lot that's there. I'm not taking up the entire lot that's there. I don't know if you're familiar with the lot that I'm wanting to put this on.
You might want to tell them the location, maybe they'll.
Yeah, the location is at the railroad tracks and State Road 50. So it's where a nursery used to be, and he took up the entire space. I don't want to take up the entire space. It's only me. For right now, it's just me. So 1/3 of that lot is about as much as I can handle by myself. And I'm not interested in, you know, truckloads of anything coming in, to be honest with you. Were there any other questions I can answer?
I guess not.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, are there, well, I know I'm asking this, any more cards?
No, sir.
All right, so we'll close this to the public, bring it back before the board. So, as what was mentioned before, is that there was previously there was a nursery there, but the code change was to, but it was done before by an exception. And so to more formalize it, staff decided that it would be more appropriate to make a code change to allow for this. Bear in mind that this is an agreement across all of community commercial, but at the same time, it's very rare that community commercials will accommodate this type of request, because generally it's an open lot, and then you just don't see a lot of open lots in community commercial. It's usually storefronts. So with that, is there any more discussion? Okay, then do we have a motion on this item?
I make a motion to approve ordinance number XX-2018, Category 9, Item A, with the exception of requiring them to get the ag permit.
It's not an option.
To get a written
Right.
agreement for subsection I.
But that should be listed in the ordinance.
Okay, do you want to also include the, to clarify in there that the timeframes for the parking and other agreements shall be for the same period
That
as?
the agreement would be in place prior to them,
The use starting?
prior to start.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, can we take a roll call on this?
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, may I ask what you are referring to about just saying in here that they don't need a license from the Department
No,
of
that they
Agriculture?
do need a license.
Oh, that they do, okay. I'm good with that then, thank you.
Was that, you wanted an agriculture certificate or license?
It's actually already in place. The Community Development Office made me do that when I was initially told that I could do this, and then now we're here for some reason. But all of that is in place. I have all of my licenses, my certificates, and my verifications.
But for other people starting their business, I think it needs to be clarified, because you'd hate for somebody somehow for that to be overlooked and then start and
Just a listed requirement.
get shut down.
No, I understand, but I just want you to feel secure. I already have that. I've already paid for it. It's already been inspected.
Cool.
All right?
Okay, so can we take a vote on this?
Member Baker?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shavir?
Yes.
Member Taylor?
Yes.
Member Noel Copeland? Yes. Chairman Williams?
Yes. Okay, motion passes, and this goes before council on the 28th. Is that-
I believe that's correct, yes.
Okay. All right, so if we'll go to the next item, please.
Okay, moving on, item 9B starts on page 21 of your packet. And just to clarify that item 9B and 9C are more or less related. They both address structure height within the urban village zoning district, which in this case applies to the Titus Landing development. So I'll kind of present both of them together, but we will need two separate motions on one for each item. So the first item, as I said, starts on page 21. And this is dealing with an ordinance to amend the urban village zoning district. Based upon a request of the member of the public, council approved advisability to amend the urban village zoning district standards related to the height of flagpoles. The proposed ordinance establishes that one flagpole up to 80 feet may be installed within a project. And the ordinance also clarifies that additional height is permitted if the ground floor of a residential and commercial mixed-use building is utilized as retail space, and that the maximum allowable height may not exceed 60 feet. Sorry, the building height may not exceed 60 feet if the building is used for commercial mixed use with residential. And then it also limits the maximum height of a building or structure to 100 feet, including roof structures or elements affixed to the roof. And so the language in strike-through underline format is on page 25 of 40 in your packet. And so on here, the table that you're looking at is just the standard development standards table that's in every zoning district for the city. And what is being changed here is under the accessory use development standards, this is where the language is inserted that one flagpole up to 80 feet in height may be installed within a project. And then the height shall be measured from the top of the flagpole from the ground regardless of mounting on the ground or mounted on top of a building. And then the clarification that was referenced in terms of building height and mixed uses and the total height to not exceed 100 feet is down in the notes section that is there below. And so that is the ordinance portion of it. I'll be glad to take any questions, or if you don't have any, I can go in and discuss the modification to the development agreement.
Just go to the next item, then we'll do
Okay.
two consecutive, is it 2 or 3?
It's just two items. So the language, the revision to the development agreement is on page 29 of your packet. And essentially what this is doing is just changing what the development agreement currently says and just referencing back to the land development regulations. So in the past, we've had to amend the land development regulations and the development agreement whenever changes occur. And so we saw this as an opportunity to amend the code and then just amend the development agreement to reference back to the code, so that in the future, if the code is changed, that development agreement will just default back to what the land development regulations say. And so that's really, in essence, what is being changed in the development agreement. There's no other changes other than that. And so with that, I'll try and answer any questions you have.
All right, so Member Noel Copeland.
I thought I saw it in here, but now I can't find it. How is a project defined?
Okay, so that definition is on page 25, and a project, and that is defined as having shared infrastructure or shared ingress, egress, or governed by a common site plan. And so in this case, the Titus Landing project actually has all 3 of those. It's under one site plan. It has shared ingress, egress, and common infrastructure as well.
And it says you can have one flagpole, so.
It's one per project.
And the project would decide who
That's up to the
would
developer.
figure out.
Right.
But the assumption being the project has some common governance so that
Correct.
only somebody will decide who the one person is that gets it.
Right. It won't necessarily be us. We will just make sure there's only
Right.
one. That's up to the property owners to figure out who gets it.
Okay.
I guess before we open this up, I had a question on, I don't know if it's in tech manuals, but is there any language about the technical aspects of the flag, the pole itself, and whether it has to, for
So that will have-
stabilization and breakaway and?
That will have to meet all of the applicable, any applicable regulations in the Florida Building Code. But yeah, so it will have to make sure that it's engineered to withstand the wind loads that the city is, the wind load district that we're in terms of that, and it'll have to be engineered accordingly.
Okay. All right, so we'll open this to the public, and do we have anybody to speak on this?
Yes, Doug Kaiser.
Okay, Mr. Kaiser?
Doug Kaiser, representing Excel Project Management, the developer for Titus Landing, and really just here to answer your questions. I think it's a pretty straightforward request.
Well, I don't actually have a question about the flagpole, but I was going to bring it up on the second. So when we're modifying the agreement, and this is kind of off topic, but I've questioned this about the movie theater. Generally, movie theaters have, and this was part of the sign when you guys came up before the sign, but so you have the movie theater there, but you don't have any billboards or signs basically stating that. So anybody driving by doesn't, unless you know it's there, it's not, people don't know. So I'm just curious if that's something.
They are on the multi-tenant signage around the property.
Well, I'm just
But they
saying,
don't have-
it's
they don't
typically,
have
I'm just saying, typically there's different signage for movie theaters. And-
Yeah, one of the signs that we had set aside to be a marquee sign like you would typically see at a movie theater that lists the movies that are showing and that sort of thing, but they didn't want to do it. They said everybody uses their phones now, so.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because I was going to bring that up on the second one, and
And it would be allowable based on the changes that we made to the sign code would allow them to put signage
Yeah.
either on the wall or things. So that was a decision of the
Okay.
movie theater.
all right. So, are there any questions of Mr. Kaiser on this? Okay, I guess not.
All right.
Thank you. So we'll close these items. Well, is there anybody else? Do you have a card? You'd like to come up and speak? No? Okay. Didn't want to exclude you. So we'll close it to the public and bring it back for the board. Vice Chairman.
I'm just a little bit concerned. Sometimes you drive through a community and you'll see a flagpole that is really out of proportion to its surroundings. And I wonder if we've given any consideration to that. You know, you can have a flagpole with a huge monster flag on it. And with all due respect for our flag, sometimes it just doesn't look right. It's not in scale with the buildings and surroundings that you have. And I'm just wondering if we've given any consideration to how this would appear from a distance.
So I can't comment on how big a flag will be put on the pole itself, but in page 28 in the staff report for the amendment to the development agreement, I did provide a couple references to other structures within the Titus Landing development. The movie theater is about 50 feet in height, and the parish medical building, the peak of the parish medical building is about 73 feet in height. So to give you a little bit of perspective, the flagpole could be about 7 feet taller than the parish medical building. So it's, I'm not going to tell you whether or not it's in scale or not in scale with the development, but there are other structures in the property that are 50 to 70 feet in height. So I'll let you make that determination. But
I have a question for you though. If you decide to put this flagpole in, the surrounding area at the base of it, what will it look like?
The tenant asked us to have a flagpole on their building, and he specifically asked that it be designed to be connected to the feature tower. Titus Landing has these feature towers, right? And so this flagpole is mounted onto the side of that feature tower, and the architect integrated it into the design so that it looks like it belongs in Titus Landing. But obviously aesthetics are personal opinion, so I think that Kahachi and Peterson's done an excellent job with the property, and I think that this is appropriate for this property.
Would we, as a commission, get a chance to review that visual, that design for the flagpole itself, or do we just approve this and then that's it?
The change to the code, it would be the only item that would be brought before this commission or city council, really. If this is approved and then it's approved by city council, it would just be part of the building permit that would be issued for whatever building it ends up going on.
My only concern is the aesthetic aspect of having a flagpole that height fitting into the project so that it incorporates a visual that's pleasing to everybody. Sometimes, you'll drive through a community and you'll see a flagpole that's, 150 feet, 200 feet, and it's just totally, it's just there. You know what I mean?
I know which one you're talking about.
It doesn't work. It's just, and so that would be my concern, is that it be proportioned to the project and it will fit architecturally where it's supposed to be and have visual effect that looks good.
We do have a 3D drawing on the cover page of our drawings that were submitted to the building department for the permit. So that is available at the city to view for any citizen. But
I'll ask staff, are there any architectural standards that the city would require for the base of the flag so that it fits and it incorporated so that it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb?
Well, based on what Mr. Kaiser said, the proposal here won't actually be, the flagpole won't be mounted to the ground. It will actually be integrated into part of the structure of the building itself. So in terms of how it will interface with the ground, it will actually just be part of the building. So you won't see a flagpole coming all the way down to the ground itself.
Thank you.
it's on the back side of the tower and then projects up over the roof. And you can,
It might look pretty good. Thank you.
I think it will.
Member Taylor?
The height of the building, is there any proposed building that's going to be 100 feet?
we don't, the whole building height thing was not really part of our specific request. I think it was more about integrating UV with the building height issue that's going through.
It was a chance to clean up the code. The Urban Village zoning district has always had a maximum height of 100 feet through the conditional use permit process. Staff used this as an opportunity, since we were amending this portion of the code anyways, just to clarify that language in the LDRs.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're good. All right, so we've closed this to the public. Is there any other questions or comments on this item? Okay, is there a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance XX 2018 flagpoles in urban village zoning, category 9, item B.
And did you want both motions or one at a time? Well, okay, just.
Let's do one at a
So is
time.
there a second?
Second.
Can we take a roll call on this?
Vice Chairman Shavir,
Yes.
Member Baker,
Yes.
Member Noel Copeland,
Yes.
Member Taylor,
Yes.
Chairman Williams.
Yes. Okay, for item C, for the development agreement. Can we get a motion on this?
I make a motion to approve development agreement 1-2018 9C.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Can we take a roll call on this?
Vice Chairman Shavir,
Yes.
Member Baker,
Yes.
Member Taylor,
Yes.
Member Noel Copeland,
Yes.
Chairman Williams.
Yes. All right, motion passes. When does this go before council? Is it also the 28th?
Yeah, it'll be at their next meeting, correct?
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so now we'll go to item D.
Item 9D starts on page, let me get to it here. 37 of your packet. And this is an ordinance related to timeframes for site plans. Currently, the land development regulations are not clear on the timeframe relating to review of site plans. The proposed ordinance establishes that one, an applicant shall have 24 months from the date of site plan submittal to obtain site plan approval, and two, that the site plan shall be valid for a period of 12 months, during which time application for the applicable building permits and/or site permits shall be made. Upon application of the required building permit, the timeframes related to building permits shall govern. And so the reason that we wanted to address this is that right now, all that the land development regulations say is that once a site plan is submitted, staff reviews it, and then the applicant has 6 months to respond to comments. However, what it does not do is establish a total maximum time frame to get a site plan reviewed and approved. And so what this can relate to is, depending on the regulatory environment, site plans that technically have not been approved but have been accepted might not have to meet current code standards. So let's say that we've been reviewing a site plan for 4 or 5 years because they just keep responding every 6 months, but we've changed codes in the interim. They're vested under the old code, and that's not necessarily a desirable outcome. And so what staff wants to do is clarify that the 6-month time frame is still there. You still have 6 months to reply to comments. But in total, a project has 24 months from date of full formal submittal to be an approved site plan. Once that site plan is approved, the developer then has 12 months to come in and pull their site permit and/or their building permit to get construction underway. And then once construction starts, the building permit timelines take effect, and then that's how development will be reviewed. And so we just felt that this was a way to make sure that we don't have site plans lingering out there for very long periods of time, and creating possibilities for developments to get around new codes if they take place after the site plan has been submitted. So that's really the purpose of this, and it helps us keep review time frames reasonable, sets a reasonable expectation for everyone.
Okay. All right, so let's open this to the public. Do we have cards on this?
No, sir.
All right, we'll close it to the public. Is there further discussion with staff or? Okay, Member Noel Copeland?
I just have a question. So if the 24 hours passes, if they have not gotten their permits,
After 24 months, so let's say they've gone through several rounds of review, but their site plan still doesn't meet the requirements that they should, then basically they would have to they can resubmit, but they will have to meet all the applicable codes at the date that they resubmit. So if something has changed since their original submittal, they will have to bring the new proposal into conformance with those plans.
And if the 24-month passes and they haven't, well, they have 12 months after the approval to get their,
To begin construction.
if that 12 months passes,
Th-
it
they-
also goes back to the very beginning?
That's correct. And so a lot of times what
Okay.
that is, we've had that happen in the past where people have just let projects sit for a long time and they will just reapply to make sure that the site plan still will meet what needs to be done. But yes, if they get a site plan approved, it sits for 12 months, they basically have to resubmit and make sure that the site plan meets all of the requirements of that time,
The current,
the current code. Yeah.
okay, thank
Mm-hmm.
you.
What is the standard for like other areas?
We looked, and it's similar to, they vary somewhat, but this is pretty standard. It's kind of middle of the road as compared to some of the others in the county and in Central Florida.
So, okay. Vice Chairman.
All the fees that are involved with the applicant, okay? If he has to come back and get an extension for 12 months, is there any fees involved with that?
So when they initially submit their site plan starting from day one, they pay their site permit review fees. If they either let the site plan go on for more than 24 months, the review periods, yes, they will have to pay those review fees again. And same thing if they have an approved site plan, but they do not act on it for 12 months and the site plan expires, they will be required to pay those fees again.
Because there is no extension here.
No,
it.
this is just,
It
these
expires
are the
and you have to
timelines.
go back to the beginning.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that the specifications, they could change it. Is that correct at that point if they're going to renew? I mean, the process basically starts over again.
Absolutely. So if something is changed in our land development regulations, they will have to meet the new standards, the current standards, correct?
Okay, thanks.
So I wanted to tag on to Member Noel Copeland's. So when we say there's no extensions, you're saying absolutely not. This is the start date, this is the finish date, no exceptions, no extensions, no manner of creating an exception or extension.
The way this ordinance is written, no, it does not offer any opportunities for administrative extensions.
Okay. Not that I'm asking that. I think 2 years is more than enough to push a project through for approval.
Sure, and sometimes, some projects are very complex, and so that's why we didn't want to be too stringent, but at the same time, we didn't want to be too lenient either, and so that's why we felt that 24 months to get a project fully engineered was sufficient.
But here's where I kind of am a little bit iffy on this, and this it goes hand in hand with developer agreements. Because when we last discussed this, these things extend out. So on a developer agreement, they extend out. Do you have to have a site plan in place with that developer agreement?
Typically,
Or is that a separate action?
yeah, a development agreement is a separate action. A lot of times a development agreement will have a concept plan or something like that attached to it, but that's not anywhere near the same level of detail that a full engineered site plan would be. So they are different approvals.
Right, but, because part of the reason why I'm bringing this up is I still believe the developer agreements extend out way too long. And then it basically locks us in to these concepts. So I'm kind of curious, if you have a developer's agreement where a certain concept has been approved, now the codes have changed, how does that, between the two of them, between your site plan and that work how does that work when there's a conflict there?
So I really don't know the best way to answer that. I will say that typically the development agreement, the concept plan is at such a conceptual level that unless something really drastic has changed in that some of the uses that were previously allowed are now no longer allowed. Let's say you had a development agreement for a single-family subdivision and the city comes back and says, well, we don't want any more single-family development. That then actually isn't even a site plan issue, that's a use issue. So because of the difference of level of detail in the two, I think that's probably a very small chance of that happening. But if that came along, I really don't know. We don't have a procedure for that. We'd have to figure it out kind of when we got there.
So I'm just trying to figure out, how much, what is the full length that we would be looking at something? Because I've said this before, in a couple of years, 4 years, everything can change. Your boards change out, your council changes out. But the last question I had was, what is the typical time frame for development to go through?
It really depends. As far as, are you talking about how long it takes to get a site plan reviewed?
If I've gotten everything, my ducks in a row, my zoning, I got everything in place, and now I'm ready for site plan review, what is the typical turnaround for approval?
A lot of that, I will say,
I'm
preface.
asking because are we adding in 1 year is why.
I'll preface my statement with it. A lot of the site plan review time depends on how long it takes engineers to respond to city's comments. But typically, once we get a site plan review, by code we have 30 days to review it. Right now, we run about 12 to 15 days to turn around and get comments back to an applicant. In the average review, it takes about 2.5 cycles to get a site plan from original submittal to a place where we can approve it as staff and they can pull a permit. That takes anywhere from 3 months to 6 months probably for a typical project that you're looking at on some of the stuff that's being built right now. Subdivisions can take a little longer because there's a fair amount of grading and stormwater calculations that have to go into it. But I would still say on that, honestly, I would think even on a subdivision, a year would be a pretty lengthy review time for us. And
Well, that's why I'm just wondering if 2 years is too long, or if, and that's why I was asking you what other areas, if they have 18 months, if they have 24 or 12 months.
we saw some that were 12, we saw some that were 36, and so we kind of picked the middle of the road and at least to get the conversation started.
Okay.
So.
Okay, that's all I had. If you're comfortable with 24. All right, what is the commission's desire on this?
I'd like to propose passing ordinance XX 2018 timeframes for site plans.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
We take a vote on this?
Member Taylor?
Yes.
Member Noel Copeland?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shavir?
Yes.
Member Baker?
Yes.
Chairman Williams?
Yes. Okay, last item.
Okay, I'm actually going to come up there. What we're going to do, I'm going to do a little demonstration of the online GIS maps that we have. If you want to minimize your agendas on there and open up, should be an icon right in the middle of the screen. The presentation viewer. Here you go, I can get you set up. So it's called View Remote Presentation. If you want to open that, and if you want to click that full screen there, that'll make it a little bigger. I'm not sure why yours is kind of off like that.
Because I just increased it.
Oh, okay. All right, so it looks like everybody's got it pulled up. You can click the little full screen button right there if you would like. It'll make it a little, there you go. So one of the projects that the community development and our GIS staff has been working on is coming up with basically an online database that allows anyone in the public to have access to our zoning information, utility, generally where utilities are located, ongoing developments, flood zone information, and all of that. And so what you have here is the city's homepage. This is what it looks like if you just go to titusville.com. Up in the upper right-hand corner where it says GIS maps, this is available regardless of where you are on the city's webpage. If you click that, it will open up this page. And so what you see here is we have a variety of different maps. So we have zoning and future land use, utilities, the capital improvement maps. So every year the city with the budget adopts a series of capital improvements. And so that's things such as road resurfacing, parks improvements, water and sewer system improvements. And so those are located in here. Applications for development review. So that's projects that we currently have site plans for that we are reviewing. On the next page, so we also have what's called interactive story maps. And so for instance, one of those, and I'll go through these, I just want to give you a brief overview beforehand. the Hopkins Avenue resurfacing project, the parks and trails that are within the city, a historic map of the historic district and structures within the city, economic development related things such as the opportunity zones. This is a map that we basically that we shared that Brevard County Public Schools created. And so this is a map of all the improvements that the half-cent sales tax are going to fund. And so that's pretty interesting to go through. And then the Brevard County flood zone map. So some of the ones I wanted to focus on were the zoning and future land use is what I'll start with. So you can click anywhere on that icon. It will open up this map, click the disclaimer. And so what you can do is you can search by address. So I will search City Hall. And so do that. You can go down and basically click on that, and it will zoom in and take you to where we are now, which is City Hall. And so what you see here, the search result first pulls up 555 Washington Avenue, which is the address for City Hall. If you click on the parcel, it will give you the basic information, the tax account number. The arrow at the top is how you navigate through the different information windows. So if you click that, this is where it starts. If you click the arrow to the right, you'll get the zoning information. So the zoning on this property is DMU, which is downtown mixed use. And then if you click where it says more info, it will actually take you to the specific section in Muni Code that has all the regulations associated with that zoning district. This map also has a variety of other information. It has future land use information. So you can see here the different land use districts. Let me zoom out a little bit so you can get a better idea. So future land use has downtown sub-districts, the areas of critical concern within the city. So the areas that are, protected as part of the well fields. Let's see. We have the airport overlays, the shoreline overlays. So you can turn on and off those layers as you see fit as you're doing property information or property research, or as cases are coming before the commission. You can go on there and find the information. Sure. Yes. So if up here at the top there is, so right now what is selected are the layers, are what's over here illustrated on the right hand side of the screen. If you, along this top bar, if you hover over this far left one, it says legend, you can do that. And let me go back to layers and turn on future land use so you can actually see it. That will tell you what each color represents. And so also once you have that layer turned on, when you click a property, it will tell you the future land use is downtown mixed use and the zoning is general use. So every time you click on one of those properties, it will give you that information. And this has been a very successful tool. We have really greatly reduced the number of calls we get from the general public in terms of just for basic zoning information. You're used to a lot of times it would be appraisers or real estate agents call us and they just want the basic information, what's it zoned and that sort of thing. And so it's really helped with that. It seems to be pretty user friendly. We haven't had a lot of complaints. So we intend to keep, this is always updated every time a zoning change goes through or conditional use or something. This data gets updated so that people can continue to use it and rely on it. The next one is the utility map. So this one has been helpful for developers whenever they're picking a site and they're doing their preliminary work on, costing out estimates and that sort of thing. They figure out, let me get this zoomed in a little bit. Maybe not over the lagoon would be helpful. So here, again, it's the layers tab and you can turn on different information, whether it's water mains. And so you see how the blue lines pop up, the gravity sewer lines, they are illustrated. And so this has been a big help as well to us and to the engineering community. They can go on and find a lot of information before they have to reach out to Water Resources and ask them for this data. Of course, we're always happy to pick up the phone if people do have questions, but it's good to help let people do their own homework beforehand. And so let's see. So those maps look pretty similar, and visually they look pretty similar. This type of map that I'm pulling up now, so this is our development applications that are under review. This is a different type of map. This is called a story map. So this first tab that you see up here at the very top is all the site plans that we are currently reviewing. So for instance, one is for a subdivision for Forest Trace. And so you can click through each of these, and then there's a image on the left-hand side that kind of is either a basic site plan or a location map, and then on the right-hand side is geographically where they're located within the city. And so you can do the same thing for conditional use permits, rezonings, comprehensive plan amendments, and so on. And again, this is updated every time we get an application. Our staff goes in and updates this so that it's current within a couple days of us getting this information. Let's see. The next one, so the Hopkins Avenue, I'll pull that one up. And so this basically gives you an overview into what a specific project entails. So basically it starts at Gray Street, ends at Highway 50. We have some images in there about crosswalk improvements and things like that. So there are several of these. I wanted to pull up the parks and trails. I think that one, we have a planning technician that's been doing a lot of work on this, and so I'm still getting used to some of these because they've been updated pretty frequently. So these are all the riverfront parks in the city, and again, they did a little write-up of what's in each park, where they're located, some pictures associated of each one, and as we continue to get more bike trails and walking trails and that sort of thing, this map will start to look more and more populated and have more lines and things like that on it. And so, let's see. The historic Titusville would be another story map. And so again, it has, properties that are on the National Register, things that are on the City Register, where the historic downtown in general is. There's a walking tour that goes through downtown, and so this basically highlights each of those points on there. And so, like I said, I know this is a quick overview, but I just wanted to show you all this. And these last two maps are maps that we share through this website, but this is not information that we keep up to date. So this, the Brevard County Public Schools, that was done by the school facilities staff, and then the flood zone map is maintained by county data and county staff. And so, but it's a good tool that we've been able to share our information with other municipalities and with the public. And so I encourage you all to explore, and if you see something that looks odd, please call us, because we'll be more than happy to fix it. But that's kind of the way we've been going, what we've been doing with this online GIS system. And it's, like I said, it's been successful, and in our opinion, it's helped out a lot, not only with us providing customer service, whenever people come to the front counter in the department, but also people sitting in their office just doing general property research. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them, but really this is just a kind of a showpiece.
No, looks good.
Yeah, please share it. This is what I can tell you about this map. The last time I went to one of the Capital Outlay Committee meetings, which was about a month ago, this was done, it's my understanding, this was done by, I think, an intern that they had, and I think it's up to date, all the projects that have been done to date, and it might even have the ones that are programmed to be completed in the future, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Yep. So but it goes in and talks about, whether the status is complete, and I do think there are some that are either ongoing or planned, and so that will, and it lists the improvements that were done for each of the facilities that are in there. So it's a good tool. It was neat when they showed it to us, and they were happy that we were willing to to share it on our page.
Who did this for you?
This one was done by the Brevard County School Board. So the Brevard County School Board.
Just overall,
It's been a group effort, really. I personally am not going to take much credit because I didn't do a whole lot on it, but there were our GIS staff has spent a lot of time on getting this data cleaned up and to a point that we can share it, and we're confident that it's accurate. And so it's been a conglomeration of community development staff, our IT staff, and a variety of different people gathering information and sharing it all. So it's been a good team effort.
There's a upcoming training that's going to be led by one of the folks who created the GIS website. Kenny is going to open up a meeting for our city staff to come and learn from him about the different capabilities of GIS. And so there will be more coming to this website. It's just come out in the past couple of months. I think it's really exciting. And if you have any feedback, we're happy to hear it and look forward to more information being shared on this website in the future.
Okay. You turn your mic. That window's been opening it up a lot tonight.
Someone asked me today, because I mentioned that I couldn't go to something that was down in Vieira because of the planning and zoning. And she said, by the way, I wanted to ask you, what is this going, where McCotter used to be downtown? And there's evidently a sign there. I hadn't gone that far north to look. Do you know what's being done down there?
No, I'm not 100% sure what
It's
property.
between Broad Street and Main Street, I think she said.
Broad Street and Main. I'm not sure. I can look into it, and I'll be happy to share it with
And the
everyone.
other thing was, I went by when I left them, the property that came before us that they wanted to turn into a charter school on where the Publix was.
Yeah.
Are they going to be using that whole building?
It was our understanding through the conditional use permit that initially, right now, what they did is they retrofitted just the former Publix unit, but it was their intent to, at some point, be using that entire shopping complex.
It looks pretty empty. I think there might be one vendor still in that
And so they
area.
said until they got the enrollment to the point where they needed those other units, they were just going to keep it consolidated within the former Publix, but they did intend to spread further out into that complex.
Well, what made it come to mind was when I passed, there were parents picking up their kids at the back of the school like they said they were going to
Yep.
do. So it's being used. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, Vice Chairman.
I'm just curious at the status of Royal Oak. I've driven by there. It doesn't look like much is going on. So I'm just wondering if we can have an update of some kind.
I think Chelsea is pulling that up right now.
So I had this question by, I think it was one of the community homeowners had reached out to our planning staff. I guess there's a rumor in the community that the property had sold. I believe that is false. I couldn't find anything to support that. The foreclosure is ongoing, and I looked up the foreclosure regarding this. There's a notice for trial that was recorded in June, prepared by the plaintiff. The defendant and is Neil Mahays, and the plaintiff, I believe, is his brother. And the most recent action is that on August 1st, the plaintiff's attorney canceled a deposition of Neil Mahays, which was scheduled for August 8th. That would have been 2 weeks ago. There's been no further change and no trial scheduled, but the foreclosure is ongoing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I suspect 2 years from now it's going to be.
Could be less.
Since we're on questions, what happened at City Council with the development that came before us on, I think, Fox Lake, and we denied it here?
The comprehensive plan amendment on Park Avenue?
Is it Park Avenue?
Yeah, if it's the one I'm thinking of, council tabled the item to September 25th, and they requested that the applicant have a meeting with the public. Okay. That meeting is scheduled for this coming Monday, August 27th. It'll be here in this room. We as staff are not facilitating the meeting. We will be here to answer questions, but it's really just a forum for the public to speak with the applicant and kind of hopefully work out any issues that they have. But that will be coming back before council on the 25th.
Okay, good.
And that is just for transmittal, so even if it is transmitted to the state, once it comes back, it will come back before this commission.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go to petitions and requests from public present. Is there anything from the public? No? All right, so let's go down the list. Member Hare, is there anything you'd like to report from the schools? Yes. Okay.
I got a report from Mr. Lindman today. I told him that we had a pretty full agenda, so keep it small. And so he said, here's a quick report for Titusville Planning and Zoning meeting. School started on Friday, August 10th, and all the summer projects were completed, which is really amazing. As always, we encounter a few challenges, but the Brevard Public School System is addressing any issues that might affect the learning environment. And we hope that everyone is patient with the extra traffic on the roads. We look forward to another successful school year. And then in another section, he says, all the school security projects, which were large, because they put fences and gates, and it's all in compounds. So that was a real large project. Were completed prior to school starting. These physical improvements were funded by the half-penny sales surtax approved by the voters and helps create a single point access for every school. So that was a pretty comprehensive overview. He didn't give details.
Okay, is that it?
That's it.
All right, we'll go back to city staff. Trevor, is there anything you'd like to report other than what you have?
No, I did just want to say that South Lake Elementary, in case anyone wasn't aware, it has been reopened as a choice school that I think has been well received thus far. And so there's a lot of pictures out there. There was a big transformation that occurred inside. So I encourage you, if you see any of the pictures, check them out because it's pretty neat what was done inside that facility.
Chelsea? No update. Okay, Member Noel Copeland?
I have no update.
Vice Chairman Shabir?
No report.
Member Baker? No report. Member Taylor? All right, and I have nothing, so we're adjourned. Thank you.